And welcome to everyone who's here. I sent out an email and I mistakenly put the wrong number for the day, although I did say it was tomorrow. So I hope people read tomorrow and not the rest of it. Since everyone's talking about COVID, I want to just start out and throw this out there for anyone who might have an idea. There was a person doing research on the Moravians here in Door County for the Heritage Village at Crossroads, which is run by the Door County Historical Society. Have everyone been there who's in Door County? And they have that replica of the old Moravian church, and they're apparently going to put in some sort of little cemetery to go with it. And she wants to research what caused death for the Moravians in, say, the 1890s, 1880s. So I'm not quite sure where to find specifics about that. Anyone have any ideas? I just know there's that Wisconsin Death Trip book, which talks about a lot of things that subject, but for all of Wisconsin, in fact, not really here in Door County, but I forget where it was, Black Creek or somewhere. But anyone have ideas?
Yes.
Sometimes the obituaries will show it.
Yeah.
Yes. I guess you could look and see what kind of pandemics were going on at the time. And I have 5 relatives actually in the Milwaukee area, the Bohemians, that actually died of TB in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Great aunts, great grandmothers, all very young. Some were only 16 years old and died. So, you may want to look at what kind of diseases were going on at the time.
And I know I had a whole bunch of them who died of diphtheria all at one time, but that was out in South Dakota area.
Yes,
So,
I have several, the diphtheria actually, and bronchitis and things in Washington County during that time.
anyone have any other ideas? It's kind of a hard thing to really pin down, except I thought through the newspapers, because they do talk about that sort of
If it
thing.
was a pandemic, I would think they would talk about it in the newspaper.
If there was a death certificate, I don't know if there would be, but you'd have to identify which people are Moravians.
Yes,
Yeah.
actually for my relatives that died of TB, it was on the death certificates rather than the obits.
It may be possible. I don't know if for the Moravian churches, if their burial records are available, maybe that would show.
That's what I was wondering, if no one here has that. That other time they knew the Trinity Lutheran Church, so I was wondering if anyone had a connection with that, but
No.
not offhand.
Tom, when you guys did that booklet where you got all the information, the Moravian church wasn't part of that, was it?
No, but the Trinity Lutheran was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I could send the death one to it's just an Excel spreadsheet for the Trinity Lutheran church, and for deaths. I mean, we have marriage, death, and baptisms. They were one of them that was willing to give it to us.
And in that case, they listed the cause of the death?
I don't know. I don't remember. I'll have to look, but but you should probably have a copy of that at the library.
Yeah, somewhere. I haven't found
Well,
it.
you've got a printed copy because we gave you one, okay? But I should get you an electronic one of all those files.
The Trinity, I have photographs of a couple of the pages of the Trinity one, and it does have a column for cause of death.
There you go.
Tom, if you're going to send that electronic copy, could I get a copy of it?
You bet. I'll
Thank
be
you.
glad to. Yeah, you want all the churches? The
That'd
whole
be
thing?
great. Sure.
Yeah, okay, well, you got a big enough hard drive?
How big is it?
No,
Just
it's
an
not
Excel
that
spreadsheet.
big. No, it's not that big.
Yeah.
It's what I'll tell you what, it's a separate Excel sheet for each church, okay? And they're grouped by baptism, marriage, and death, and sometimes communion, and sometimes confirmation, okay? And Moravian Church wouldn't give out that information. I don't know why. You have to talk with, what's her name? Howard, Burma Howard, she would know. But they're not, what I'm trying to get to is that the spreadsheets have not been put together into a database per se. It would be easy to do. I'm just not very up on databases. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Tom, do you have the information on St. Mary's in Maplewood?
Ooh, Maplewood.
Forestville?
No, it was St. Mary's of the Lake up in Bailey's Harbor, but not in Maplewood.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it was just Northern Door. It was Trinity and Zion Lutheran, St. Mary's of the Lake in Bailey's Harbor. It seems like there was, oh yeah, and then was it St. Joseph's in, I think that's in Easter in Egg Harbor. And who's the one that's in, well, it's Stella Marsh, but it was called something else, I think, at that time up in Sister Bay.
St. Rosalia.
No, not Maplewood.
St. Rosalia's.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And it goes up to about 19, the latest was about 1940. And not all of them had them that late, had information. And it started right around 1880, 90. And some of that early stuff was spotty. But I mean, I'll give it to anybody can have it. I mean, they gave us, because we sent it to, I sent the files to and donated them to Family Search, but I think they probably looked at it and said, we ain't gonna do that. And which is too bad. And the actual documents that we used, I gave to the Door County Historical Society. So they have the actual documents. And we put a printed copy of everything at the Sister Bay Library and at the Sturgeon Bay Library. So.
Okay, thank you for that information. That's good to know. I've been, the Laurie History Room has a lot of things in it, and some of them, most of them are cataloged, but a lot of things aren't. And there's some really interesting things in that room. So I've decided, we created a while back, the archives, and Steve Rice and I created a Facebook page for local genealogy and history. And I'm going to start putting something in there found in the Laurie History Room.
That's a good idea.
So
yeah.
I'm digging out things that are pretty interesting. Like there's a book on Native American settlements in the Great Lakes, and there's all sorts of photographs in there that someone glued into it, including Chief Oshkosh, and he signed it himself. So I'm going to take some pictures of those and start posting them just to pull out some of the weird things that I found in there.
Are you going to do that on the genealogy page?
It's a Facebook page.
Oh, on the Facebook.
I can show you, I have it here. Let me show you quickly. You can join the group, and then we haven't done much with it. We created this, but we haven't done much with it. So I thought I better start doing this. So here's,
well, yeah, okay. I do get your Facebook page too.
well, this is a sub group on library history and genealogy, local history and genealogy. And like, this is what I posted. I found this in the history room about the Ephraim Library in 1949 and their rules. But as I say, I'm going to post that one on the Native American tribes of with the Chief Oshkosh signature and photographs and various things. And I found a really interesting tour book for Michigan, I think it is, Illinois, and around here. And I'm gonna put pictures there from that thing. It's really interesting. And someone back in 1916 wrote down a trip that they were going to be taking, and has it all on a little piece of lined paper. So I thought that was kind of curious.
Yeah, I did see that this morning or yesterday, whatever. So I must.
You may be a member. And there is a Civil War diary hidden in that room, which I searched for years and finally found.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Because, Wisconsin gave diaries to all of the Civil War soldiers. and asked them to keep diaries, and they put a whole bunch of them on the state historical site. But a lot of them, of course, didn't have a lot of content. So they put the ones with more content on the site. This one that I found was someone who ended up, just wrote a little bit about the Civil War. It's really hard to read it. It's so faded. But he then was writing all sorts of things about sailing to Bailey's Harbor and up and down, selling, whiskey and things like that. So a lot of it is, I'd like to digitize it, but at this point I don't have that.
Talking about the Civil War, I have an ancestor who from Maryland, and he was part of what they called the Patapsco Guards in the Civil War. He was on the Union side, but in his records, I found that he was a prisoner of war for a while in Front Royal, Virginia. And then he was released and went back home and whatever. But I get two things. I want to research, find out more about how come, and he was a prisoner of war and what battle and so on and so forth. But the other thing is, it got me to thinking that if some of these fellows were taken as prisoners of war, I don't know why I have the feeling they were just sort of, grouped together in camp and held on to, and then things happened, and then they were told, go on home. I'm not trying to make it light of it, but it just seemed like it was more of a detention center rather than what we kind of know of prisoners of war in these days with, beatings and terrorism and, and so on and so forth.
Mary Ellen, have you seen any history on?
Did we lose Tom?
I lost my voice.
And you lost your picture too, Tom.
We've got your voice back.
Maybe not.
No, maybe not.
Well, anyway, I have not researched in depth at all about it. It just popped up when I was looking at records on Fold 3 and I started reading them. And I thought, that's kind of interesting.
I think it may vary. The person who knows a lot about some of the prisoner of war camps is Larry Desautels. Have you seen his presentations?
Yes, I have, but
he wrote the book on the Madison prisoner of war camp for the Confederate soldiers. And he's done enormous research for that book, but he's also traveled to a variety of locations.
Yeah.
So if you could get a hold of him, he'd probably give you some.
Oh, that's great. Yes, I do know Larry. So yeah, thank you. That's a good tip.
Yeah. And it looks like Tom is back a little bit, but I don't hear him.
I'm trying. I'm trying. I don't know what's going on here, but
I don't know if we have a problem. I couldn't hook up through my laptop. I had to come in on my iPad.
I'm going to get out of this and come back. Okay.
Okay.
So anyway, that just talking about that, it popped into my head. That's all.
Yeah. Has anyone else done research on the Civil War, on the ancestors?
I do have one ancestor. He's a great uncle that actually was on the Union side, fought with the Wisconsin. I think it was the 39th or the 37th Infantry Regiment. He ended up being a corporal at the end, and he actually was in the Battle of the Crater, and he was wounded the day of the Battle of the Crater. And if you have a chance to look at that, that's a very interesting battle that was held in Virginia, close to Cold Harbor, actually, where the Confederates were on, obviously, by Cold Harbor. And the Wisconsin soldiers, or I should back up, the Pennsylvania soldiers actually convinced General Grant to allow them to tunnel underneath the Confederates. So the Pennsylvania miners tunneled underneath, and then they blew this huge hole underneath the Confederate lines, and it created a massive crater. And when the tunnel was opened up, a lot of regiments ran through, and one of them was, of course, the Wisconsin, I think it was 37th. And so they ended up the bottom of the crater, and not all of the Confederates were killed. So it ended up being a turkey shoot, actually.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
And so he was wounded that day, actually. And, you know, it's just very fascinating. I've been to quite a few Civil War battlefields out east, but we never did get down to Cold Harbor and the Battle of the Craters. So one day when we have some time, we'll go back there and look at that. But
Mhm.
yeah, so that pretty much is his story. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
hadn't heard any of that
Yeah.
about that battle. That's interesting.
Yeah, in fact, you know, at the end, General Graham said it was just a shameful thing, and that was one of the worst things he ever did, was prove the Pennsylvania miners, you know, digging underneath the Confederates, because so many Union soldiers were killed. I think the battle ended up as a draw, you know,
Mhm.
really nobody won, I guess, if I remember correctly.
You know, another one that one of my ancestors would my third great grandfather was in the Mexican War, and he was killed at the Battle of Molino del Rey.
Really?
I'm still, he was with the Pennsylvania Volunteers. But I'm beginning to suspect, from not getting much information, that he was well, killed there, of course, but I think they buried them there because there were so many in the Mexican-American War that were killed there, that were just put into mass graves down there somewhere. It's just outside Mexico City. It was near the end. He was under General Worth, and it was near the end when they were going to take, I think it was Churubusco. No, Churubusco came first, then Molino del Rey, then Chapultepec, and then they marched into Mexico City, and that was the end. So this was kind of near the end of the war, but he's, boy, that's a tough nut to crack. I can't seem to get through, although an interesting thing, and I'd have to look up the website for you, there is, but you could Google it. There is a website, it's called the Niles Register, Niles Register, that apparently, near as I can tell, it was articles cohesively put together from all of the news outlets or in the news papers, whatever their correspondent sent back to them, day by day by day of the war. And anyway, it was fascinating. That's where I found a lot of information. There
That's
weren't
cool.
too many old news. Well, you know how it is. The farther back you get it, the harder it is to get a hold of stuff. But anyway, so.
Well, there's a new book on the Mexican-American War that's very thorough. You might want to have a look at it. It's here in the library.
Okay. I think you mentioned that another time. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Haven't gotten around to it. It's on my to-do list, but boy,
Yeah.
my to-do list is getting pretty long.
Yeah, I recently discovered another great uncle on my father's mother's side, actually, and he was a Texas Ranger, which I think is just totally cool. And so he obviously wasn't at the Battle of the Alamo, but he's kind of during that time, so it'll be fun to research him.
Yeah, there's a new book on the Alamo in the library.
Oh, really?
You can tell I order books.
Yeah, no, yeah, you'll have to send me the name of
Well,
the
this
new
one
book.
is by, it's called Don't Call It the Alamo, or Don't Say the Alamo, or something. So it's
Oh,
giving
okay.
what they say is a more realistic view of what happened and why people were immigrating over there, and
Oh, sure.
all of the different groups,
Mhm.
the Spanish, the Mexicans, the English, Americans. So it's pretty interesting. I've started reading it.
Okay. The book that I like the best of the Alamo is, I think it's At the Gates of the Alamo, and it traces how Jim Bowie, William Travis, and David Crockett got there. Kind of 3 storylines. It's quite interesting, actually.
Now we have 2 Toms here. Without a microphone though. So, well, maybe we'll hear his story sometime soon.
We had, I found a couple of people in our family that were Civil War. I haven't dug into them very deep. One on my wife's side, we did have a couple of letters from his general that was his commanding, or whatever they called him back then, talking about some of the things that he did. And I don't know of any of them that were killed during the Civil War. We didn't have many in our family because they really didn't get here until the late 1850s or 1860s. So kind of a little bit premature, but on my wife's side, she had some family that were here a long time. So I'm sure there's more. I just haven't found them all. I know we had some revolutionary ones, and you talk about difficulties finding information, but every so often you come across a document that
Yeah.
gives you a little insight. Doesn't tell you much, but it gives you a little insight to what was going on.
Yeah, I've got one of those too. And matter of fact, I'm trying to get more information for the DAR, and I can't quite. I'm almost there, but that guy is so elusive. And he was from Anne Arundel, Maryland. And I don't know. I'm having trouble getting him, but
My wife does have one generation. Let's see, I can't think of exactly, but all we have to do is file the papers to get the DAR, but it's not worth it, I guess.
Yeah.
The cost is so high.
oh, I know it is. And
The
I
research
don't.
has all been done, so we just have to add her name to the list and send them
Yeah.
a few $100, and I guess she can get it. And she said,
Yeah.
I don't want it.
I know, and I'm really not sure. It's just I sure would like to, if you do anticipate joining, they have a lot of information that would then become available to you to fill in your missing pieces. And that's kind of, why I thought, well, pay the money and consider it another resource and,
Well, we very well may do that once I
Yeah.
decide to get my head back into this full speed ahead.
yeah, I
I don't
know.
It just gets away from me. I'm hoping this fall I'm going to dedicate 1 or 2 afternoons a week and just say I'm going to put in 3-4 hours of work a week, and
The trouble I have is,
got to get on a schedule, otherwise it isn't going to happen.
well, I know it. And the trouble I have is I'm very firm. I'm only going to work on this person today. And then I find something kind of neat. So I go off in that direction and that direction. And pretty soon, I'm making no headway, but I'm.
Those bright shiny lights get you.
Oh,
every time.
God, they get me all the time.
And that's what happens to me here in the library. I had a question on Kellner Fen, if anyone knows where Portage Park is here in Sturgeon Bay, where they cut the canal through. It turns out that there's a cranberry bog across from Portage Park, across the road in there a little bit. So the way I do history research is to go to genealogy immediately. So it turns out that that early bog was owned by a man named William Casgrain, who was from Canada. And he was from a pretty prestigious family in Canada. He became an engineer, and he was one of the engineers for building the canal in Sturgeon Bay. So when he was here, he bought this land and was growing cranberries. Who would have guessed they were growing cranberries in there, right? So I have a whole lot of information on his family, and he was living in Milwaukee. Unfortunately, he finally killed himself in Chicago. He apparently turned the gas on in his hotel room. I don't know why he wouldn't think that it might cause fire for the entire building, but that's what he did. So, everything, you can learn everything about history by looking at the people.
Mhm.
And boy, did I go down a dark hole on that one, having to research that family. Now, if you go to Portage Park, think about it. I haven't found a way into that Kellner Fen, which is owned by, I think, the Land Trust. So I'd like to go in and see this property. There's all sorts of good stories on the newspapers about the characters who own the land after him too. So Tom, are you back yet? Still trying. And there's Steve Johnson. Does anyone have any other projects you've been working on that you want to mention?
I've found somebody that can do the research in Milwaukee, actually, on the German newspapers. I've got some relatives, German relatives,
Mhm.
that died in the late 1800s. In fact, one of them was my relative that was in the Civil War. And right now I can't find any obits on them. So I was able to find somebody that has access to the German newspapers. And so they have a list of my relatives that they're gonna try to research
Wow.
for me.
There's quite a number of German newspapers on the Wisconsin database,
Oh, really?
but you have to be, I think, a Wisconsin resident or have a library card here to access
Okay.
it. The trouble is, I was looking at it myself, and it's like impossible to read it
I know.
unless you're a
It's-
German speaker.
It's very difficult, right?
Yeah.
So,
So
and-
is this
and
person you have helping you German
He's-
speaker?
Well, he's gonna translate for me, so
Okay.
we'll see what he comes up with. So
Yeah.
he has quite a few hits on some of my relatives, which is nice. So hopefully I'll find out some more about them.
Some of the translation apps that you can get, I know there's one with Apple that you can just copy and paste text or things that you find, and does a pretty good job. I was surprised.
But sometimes it's in that old German script, an older script. And then what do you do? Have you tried
Well,
that at
that's a
all?
different, yeah, the stuff in Milwaukee, I would think would be the
Okay.
normal German, but back in the old country. where
No.
our family came from,
No, some of it's not.
Isn't
I've
it?
been looking.
Oh, I haven't run into the problem yet, but we don't have much in Milwaukee, so I don't have to worry.
Yeah. It depends on the exact newspapers, but there are some German papers that they're on something called the Wisconsin newspaper archives or something. It's through Badgerlink, you can get at it. And they
Okay.
have the Modern Wisconsin Newspaper Association, and then no, it's on our library website, genealogy page. There's a link there, but you do need a library card to access it. So
And Family Search has some people that can do the old German, I know. I saw that when I was doing some digging one day, and so contact them and send them what you want them to translate, and they'll do that for you. Free, I believe.
trouble is searching for the names, because I had a German ancestor in Milwaukee and I can't find his name in the German newspapers. I found it a little mention in the English language papers when he passed away, but not in the German papers.
Okay.
And yet we have letters written to him in Milwaukee and, sent from Germany. So I know he was there. And it wasn't that big a place because they were addressed to his name in Milwaukee, and that was it. And we have them
Right.
today.
Well, maybe he just didn't make the newspaper. I mean,
He was involved with the people who founded the Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Church.
so yeah.
So I've been looking their names up too, because they're in the letters, and I can't really figure out, because of the language and the writing, it's hard to, just search. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of that old German is real scrolly.
Yeah.
There's lots of
Oh,
scroll.
yeah, you can't make
And
heads
they-
or tail.
Right, and
So
they
I'm
use
not
those
sure how to
ink
figure
blots,
that all out,
Right.
unless you're a German speaker.
Right.
So, hi, Steve. And Tom's still not back to, oh, there he is, so I have to let him in, sorry. He's been coming and going. I hope he can get connected this time. Hello,
I'm wondering.
Can you
if we'll
hear
have a
me?
problem.
Yep.
yes. Loud and
You
clear.
can, now you can hear me?
Uh-huh.
Hey, all right, I'm back. I don't know what's the matter with my PC, but I had to go to the iPad.
I did too, Tom, so I wonder if we have a problem on this side of town.
I don't know, but that's okay.
Well,
I'm
my-
here.
My system said I was low on resources, so I cut some stuff out, but it might be a lower stream of some sort.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'm
Maybe
on
I-
my laptop. It's okay where I am. I'm north of town though.
Yeah, well,
Oh, well.
that's okay. I'm here now, so that's all that matters to me anyway.
Did you want to tell us what you were going to tell us earlier? Do you remember
That's
what it
so-
was?
It's so long ago, I don't remember.
Civil War prisoners of war, something like that.
Oh, I was going to ask you, Mary Ellen, you were talking about how you thought that the prisoners of war had an easy time, and I was going to remind you
Well,
of
I didn't quite
Andersonville.
say easy.
Well, I was going to remind you of Andersonville, and then also the story that, remember, Laura, that the fellow that wrote or had the book about the Camp Randall
Yeah,
prisoner
Larry
camp?
Desautel
Yeah, you probably mentioned that. Yeah, and yeah, it was pretty tough. So
I don't have a Civil War ancestor, but I found a great great uncle from World War I that has another Wisconsin Charlotte connection. So I was able to take a field trip to Camp Greene, which was where I haven't found out the regiment. I have it somewhere, but I don't have it on the tip of my tongue, where they trained specifically for the battlefields in France. They made duplicate fields because we just had a lot of red clay here. So I bribed my husband with barbecue to take a trip out there to see what was left, but it's been really fun kind of connecting that history and then what I had from my grandma's diary, which was from his brother's diary, and then connecting up that time between, that was the same time that my great grandma passed from the Spanish flu in Chicago. So there was just a lot going on in that family at that same time.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm trying to get it. I researched the Battle of Argonne a little bit and found out that was towards the end of the war, that he was probably in the front lines because he was a German speaker, and just that was just such a long drawn out battle, but that it did eventually turn the tide and was, you know, towards the ending of the war. But yeah, it's amazing. Some, you know, and they had a huge thing at the Museum of History here a couple of years ago, but it just was not on my radar because it was the centennial of Camp Greene, this training place. And so just to go and see, there was at least a plaque and the officers building that now they're making into a museum and some other things. But yeah. Oh, and I forgot to mention it is haunted, supposedly.
Oh, good.
So I'll let you know.
As long as you don't bring them home with you.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. Well, there was a whole story because part of the reason Charlotte was chosen was for its warm weather and because it was directly on the rail line to New York, so they could bring in the munitions and the men. And then that's where eventually my great great uncle, you know, went up to New York, Long Island, then shipped over to France. But of course, ironically, they had the worst winter weather they've ever had here. So it was just, you know, here they are on those little canvas tents, you know, maybe on some planks. And then of course it turned to mud in the spring and just up to, you know, what they had to endure. And, you know, just some neat local history things here about one of the Wisconsin people that came down was named McCrory, who is the former, well, his descendant is the former mayor of Charlotte and former governor of North Carolina. So I was kind of trying to write a little story, a little fictionalized account, you know, of my great great uncle and saying hi to McCrory, and you know, for the Charlotte folks down here, they would get a little more kick out of that kind of history. But you know, I understand what you're saying about the spiral. It started as this little story about him coming down to train at this camp, and then all of a sudden it's, you know, a huge thing. So it's been very interesting.
Well, does anyone else have anything to say? Otherwise, I'll point out a few things I put on the page for the genealogy group that I found, and it was on that Eastman blog. Did anyone read that lately?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I looked at it.
Yeah, I went out looking for some news on what was going on in genealogy world, and I found a couple of interesting things. So I put them up here. This is our page for today, September 2nd. And here they are. This has, since you're all, a bunch of you are really interested in software, here he has something about this free software. Has anyone heard of it or tried it?
I've heard of it before. He wrote about this once before, and I guess they've upgraded it or something. And I haven't tried it. I saw this and I was gonna say, I think I'm gonna try it and see what it's like,
Yeah, it looks-
I did try it and it was okay. It
Nothing.
kind of took over your computer or your iPad a little bit more than I wanted it to. So
Oh, okay.
and it kept every time I wanted to do something else on my thing, 2 days later, this thing would pop up in the middle of it. So
Yeah.
Oh,
I
really?
decided, it's got too many bugs in it, so I popped it off.
Yeah, don't need that.
No,
No.
I got enough problems.
but it was a basic, it looked like a good solid basic program. I mean, very basic. I don't know. I didn't dig into the sources and all that kind of stuff, but the
Mhm.
general gist seemed to be okay. But like I said, it kept popping up everywhere. So I said, enough of that.
when you buy the other ones like RootsMagic and Family Tree Maker, what's the cost of those programs? They tend to be pretty expensive, aren't they?
No, well, I don't know. I mean, well, RootsMagic, it's going to be interesting to see what he charges for number 8, but I believe in previous times, they were like $29, I think,
Okay.
for the full software, and like 19 or something for the essentials, and I don't know what, that's the lower one. And then if there's an update, you will get updates for that price, but if there's a major update, and I don't know what qualifies, maybe like going from 6 to 7 or 7 to 8, and you have a license, and it's only like $20. And
Okay,
I'm trying to think, I think Family Tree Maker is normally, Steve, correct me on this, I think it's $75, and they had a special here a
79,
while
I think it
ago.
was 79 and they had it for a half price at one. a while
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
That's when I bought
And I
it,
don't
so-
know the status of that right now, if they still have that half price deal or not.
No, they don't. I was
Okay.
looking for something else when I was on their site the other day, and it still was 70, I think it was 79.95. I
Yeah,
remember something on RootsMagic when I was doing some of that testing. And I don't know if he'll ever get this program up and running. It's been promised for I don't know how many years. But,
yeah, I know. I mean, it's ridiculous.
But I had read
been-
someplace that it was going to be 2 or 3 times the normal cost.
Oh, well, I don't
what
doubt
they were
that. I
doing.
mean, he's
Oh,
been
my God,
working on it for 3 or 4 years,
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's in that ballpark. Maybe
Yeah.
a little less, but
Mhm.
there'll be a price war, I'm sure.
Well, that's interesting. So the other one I saw on the Eastman blog was these classes in September, since some of you really like to take a lot of classes.
Yeah.
So if anyone attends any of them, be sure to come back and tell us about it. These are free classes, which is nice.
Yes. And
And
they
then-
also, they
Yeah.
also record them and they put them on Facebook for a period of time. I don't know what that time is, but I know it's less than a month. Okay. It's probably 2 weeks or a week or something. If you're on, so yeah. You can
And
see
then
it then.
here's another thing he had, MyHeritage has free census records from different locations for
Now,
Labor Day weekend. Has anyone tried that?
well, I have a question about it because I could be doing this wrong, but over the years, they've had, during a holiday, they've offered free things and so on.
Yeah.
So I go to the website
Mhm.
and now you're in it already, but when I bring it up on the homepage, it doesn't really say register, but I think that's what they want, which I have no problem with, except it says, we'll set up a family tree for you.
Mhm.
I don't want that. And I can't get in, I can't access.
Well, let's see if this link is right here on the library page. So it looks like it'll work.
You're on I'm sorry, you're on the library page?
Yeah, this is the calendar.
Okay,
If you go to the calendar up here and
Right.
choose the program or
Right.
the event that we're doing right now,
yeah.
I put these links right here.
Oh, okay, so maybe.
And so if you click right here, it should pull this up. You see, I'm not signed in.
Yes, I do. And that's great because I'm gonna do it that way. I've just been going when they've offered this in the past.
Yeah,
I've just been going right to the MyHeritage, and then they
Oh.
want me to set up an account, and they call it though, let's set up your family tree for you.
yeah,
And I think, well, I don't know, I don't want that. And so I delete my account and get out right away.
mhm.
Is that because
Because,
you're on the library one, Laura?
no, I wasn't on the
No, I think,
library one.
I think the links are from different, come from different locations.
Could
Because
be.
So if you
I
just
tried
go
to do what-
straight through, but
I
this
tried
was
to
on
get
the
rid of my
Eastman
tree
blog.
at I tried to get rid of my tree at MyHeritage, and they wouldn't let me unless I closed the account.
Yeah,
So I closed the account. I can always put a new one up, but
You can also, could you delete people?
yeah, you could go in and do changes to your tree, but you couldn't get rid of the tree, and then they kept.
Yeah,
And I
Well,
just,
and
because
the
of what
thing-
everything's happening that we talked about last time, I decided just to get rid of all my trees and let it all settle down, and then decide if I want to put some back out there at a later date.
yeah. I
Because
guess
it's real easy to do, so.
what frustrated me was that they kept saying, here, this holiday weekend, it's free this, free that, whatever. So I would just go to their homepage, and the only way I could get in was to set up an account, which they called,
yeah,
setting up your family tree. And I didn't want that because I thought, or I didn't know, but I thought if I'm looking around, nosing around about stuff, they're going to put that on some sort of a tree. I didn't, I
Yep.
kept yelling at my computer. You said it was free. Why are you doing this? I don't want this. So, but I
Well, what
go
they
into
all,
the-
a lot of them like, what a lot of them like to do is they tell you it's free. And then they set up an account, and you have to give them a credit card. And if you don't cancel the free before that 30 days or whatever it is, then they charge your credit card for a new
Yeah.
license.
yeah,
So you
I
have to be
don't.
real careful with that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't ever give my credit card unless I want to. Now, that's an interesting point because this year I decided, instead of doing the Ancestry's all access, because I found Fold 3 was not very useful for me. So I decided to get World Explorer, and then I bought newspapers.com on my own. They had a deal going, $74 or something like that for 6 months. Well, my my newspapers is due to expire. And they said, well, we'll renew it, but because you're also an Ancestry member, we'll give you the 6 months for $59.90. I thought, well, that's a heck of a lot better than my 74. I'm just letting it, renew at $59.90. But I found the all access really was not really beneficial for me. So the World Explorer, and then the newspapers.com, the Publisher's Extra is what I get. That worked a lot better. It's more useful for my money. But I'd never seen that before, where they offered me to renew it because I was an Ancestry member. So that's kind of nice.
yeah,
Well, based on our discussions last month, I looked at that Ancestry change, and I decided that, I'm not going to pay $800 a year for that. I'm going to see what happens if I can just use Family Search because it's free. So I downloaded everything into a GEDCOM file, and then I canceled my Ancestry account because it was coming due 1st of August. And so I was canceled my Ancestry account. And then I got notice from both Fold 3, all three of them, Fold 3, newspapers, and so on, that I still had some credit on there. And those accounts are still open. And yeah, eventually they're going to send me a note and tell me I have to buy something, another license. But I'm going to see how just using using the library version of Ancestry and Family Search, how that works out for me.
So
Then
both,
I'll save $800.
both you and Steve made modifications to your Ancestry trees. Even with I thought there was an update that they didn't really mean it kind of thing. Did anybody
Yeah.
hear about that? No?
On Ancestry?
Yeah, I thought they came out
Oh.
with kind of a revised statement. It wasn't too many days after we talked about that, or actually, well, you all talked about it. I was in Virginia, so I was watching the recording of your discussion.
Yeah.
And they kind of said, well, yeah, we're not really going to use it, but
Yeah,
it was
right.
more kind of a legal thing, like if you put a picture up and other people import it or use it for whatever, they just couldn't guarantee the privacy of that, is kind of what it sounded to me was their revised statement. Like you
They
could
also,
take it down,
they
but they
also
couldn't
reserve the
guarantee it
right.
was, yeah, you could take it down, but they couldn't guarantee it really didn't,
Right.
it really was down because other people might still have it, that it wasn't. So I don't know if it was just they got so much more backlash than they thought and then they revised it, or they just hadn't issued a clear statement in the beginning, if it was a lawyer thing. But I kind of, I mean, I don't have an Ancestry account, but I work, you know, with people who do, and, you know, we all kind of decided, okay, status quo kind of thing. It just sounded like more of the same. So I was curious if anybody else had heard anything else.
I saw that, but I think they still reserve the right in case things quote unquote changed to do what they felt was appropriate. And you have to remember, this is a financial group that owns
Mhm.
Ancestry now, hedge fund type thing. And their objectives are totally different than the people that founded it. So, you know, like I said, I'm going to sit on the sidelines and watch it for a while. And I'm kind of going to do what Tom is doing, just use family search. And
Hmm.
if they,
I think
if
a
they
good
refer
place to
you to
look,
Ancestry, then I'll go to the library version.
the legal genealogist is a good place to look for that update. She posted something about it, and she is a lawyer, so she gives you a little bit of insight.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I read
And
that.
that's-
She did a wonderful job, but there was still a lot of
And that's
open,
here.
unanswered questions. So
You
Yeah,
know,
that's again on this same page. with the
Yeah,
link.
because you're right. That's where I saw the update. It was 2 days after that. It was
Right.
August 4th and then it was August 6th. Yeah.
you know, I do have a question for those of you who say, I have Ancestry and blah, blah. Do you have trees on Ancestry? See, I only have
Mhm.
Ancestry. I have no tree there. I only
Okay.
use Ancestry for search. That's it.
Yes,
But-
I
A lot
had a
of
tree.
trees.
Pardon me?
I-
So you
I had
have,
a tree.
okay, so you guys have trees, so I'm sure
I had. I
this
took
whole
mine
bit
down.
about the
told-
pictures and the ownership, et cetera, would be more of concern to you, I would imagine. Is that why you switched, Tom, pretty much, or?
Well, okay, first of all, I started out immediately when I started with Ancestry, I took the approach that I would only put in Ancestry information that I found online, with the idea that that's public information, whether or not it is, but it's still, anybody can find it, okay?
Yeah.
So anything that I have that I feel is personal or private to my family, I would not put that online. I would put that in a RootsMagic tree. And I have a Roots. So RootsMagic tree right now is my tree, you know.
But you do not sync to, or do
what?
the tree share to Ancestry?
No. What I did when they came out with Tree Share for RootsMagic, I ran a separate tree from Ancestry into a separate tree and RootsMagic just to see what it looked like. But
Mhm.
I never went back, okay?
Uh-huh.
Because I didn't want to take my RootsMagic private information and put it on Ancestry.
Right.
Okay. Now I have since, gotten rid of my Ancestry tree, so I don't have to worry about that, because I'm doing the same thing you're doing, in the sense that I'm using the library version of Ancestry to do my research on Ancestry.
Mhm.
Now, as far as getting information from RootsMagic over family search, well, RootsMagic allows you to compare the information you have with the information family search has, and you can decide which of that information you want to share. Okay, you can decide if you want to take the information from RootsMagic over to family search, or vice versa. That's up to you. Okay, you don't have to do it. Okay, see what I
Yeah,
mean?
but then on family search, you run the risk of people changing the information
Yes.
you put on there via RootsMagic.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah, they
Absolutely.
can change. They can put information on there and change it. And then theoretically, if you can't, if the two of you can't resolve the issue, then theoretically there's some supreme
Yeah.
group that makes that decision. I mean, that's what I was told when I asked the question.
I'm telling you, it's just a racket. It really
It really
is.
is, yeah.
Oh, geez. And now I hear Ancestry bought Genealogy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's French
Yeah.
company.
The field is getting narrower and narrower.
yes, it is.
No,
They're
I
all
pulled,
headed-
I took
I-
my trees, I took all my trees down just to, I guess, to feel more comfortable at this stage until we, like I said, until we see what shakes out.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I won't put it back up because I got a lot of information back from people that were relatives or
Sure.
maybe third or fourth remove type things, but they bring a couple of things into the picture every so often, or you get an email. So I found it to be valuable from that perspective, but I guess just having that
Right.
information out there all the time until I see what they're going to do. And I'm more concerned about what they're going to do with the DNA, even though the attorney kind of said that was safe.
Yeah,
It's still out there. I don't
Yeah.
control it. So
yeah,
Yeah, I,
yeah.
that's
Well, so
that's where I'm at. So
yeah,
unless
I-
unless I've done
by the way,
something.
they did update the DNA again, it looks like, and now our ancestry's changed again. So I'm
It
becoming much
does.
I'm becoming much less German. My wife thinks
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
yeah, I do have some pictures and stuff out on Ancestry. I agree with Tom that if it's really kind of private things, I don't put that out on Ancestry. But I've been in a lot of cemeteries lately and, taking pictures different than find a grave stuff. I take my own. And so those I've been putting out on Ancestry because it's like a tombstone or something. And I don't have an issue if somebody looks at
Yeah.
a tombstone.
no.
And I do have other pictures out there, like of some relatives. And the picture, I have many pictures of my relatives, and I put some stuff out there for some of my distant cousins and things that have actually contacted me. And the pictures that I put out at Ancestry, I'm okay with that. It doesn't bother me. But really private stuff that I've researched and basically paid money for, I don't put out there on Ancestry. I do have a tree, a partial tree out of Family Search, and I probably should work on it more. But I kind of agree with the statements here that my Family Search tree bothers me because I've got people in there that have got the wrong data. It's just wrong.
I know.
You
They're
know,
awful.
Yes,
And
yes,
and spellings, and it's just so aggravating, and it's not that I'm like a super genealogist or anything, but on stuff that I've read, that I've researched privately through church records or death certificates or whatever, or spellings of names, and I look at Family Search and what people put out there, it's just wrong. Like
Yeah.
they'll pull the links from somebody that's got the same name, but like from a
Yes.
different state. And, to
Yeah,
try
yeah,
to, and, to try to fix that up and clean that up, it's so time consuming.
yeah, it can be. It can really be time consuming to
You
keep
know,
that straight.
Yeah.
You'll have somebody, because of the names, the duplication of names, you'll have somebody, a child born before the mother is.
Right.
You know, and they put it out there. They say this is the child. No, it's not. The mother's not born yet. Look at your dates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've contacted some of these people, and it sounds like I'm complaining, and I guess I am.
Yeah.
But I've contacted some of the people, and they do answer back, and I'll say, well, why do you have this data? Because it's not right for whatever reason. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, I was just kind of going through and like just fixing the records or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's for me,
They're
Family
not
Search-
really They're not really
Mm-mm.
genealogists.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. That's
Right.
why I have my tree, the family tree for me and my wife, her families, is on RootsMagic. Now, if RootsMagic doesn't get their act together, I'm in trouble. But at least right now they're okay.
Right. The one tree that I started, and I haven't put much time into it, is on MyHeritage. Now, that one I find very interesting because I've got Swedish relatives, and it seems to me the Swedes are really tend to be out on MyHeritage. And I'm seeing a lot of data on my Swedish relatives, which I didn't expect to see. So that,
Europeans use it more.
right. That I find very helpful, but I haven't had the time to spend on my Swedish relatives because they're so aggravating with their names, you know. They are, you know, the spelling of a Carlson can be done so many different ways, you know.
Yeah.
So
Denise,
What?
try looking for Gray and Johnson. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I tear
What?
my hair out.
I
How about
know,
Adams?
you
Yeah.
know,
My wife has Adams.
Yeah.
okay?
Oh,
Oh,
so,
Lord.
but
And as far
anyway,
as I
well,
can tell, there was 8 different so far. There's probably more. 8 different Adams families that came to the United States, well, to America between the time of the Mayflower to 1700. 8 different ones. Okay. And trying to keep that straight.
it's
And
different.
people just Adams. Oh, it must be the same family. No,
Oh.
it's not the same family.
I know.
Maybe it is over when you go back to
Right.
England, but it's not here.
Yeah.
So
You know,
I
I guess,
wish I could hire the man from Finding Your Roots and have him unroll this big
Yes.
chart with
Yeah.
Yeah.
all my family
Yeah.
on it.
Harry, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess with all these websites, it's just, you know, and programs, I guess you just select the one that works for you and just be mindful of the risks associated with the other ones. So,
Yeah.
and make sure
You
when
know-
you put pictures out there, you don't put pictures, you can turn it off when you send them out to Ancestry or wherever. You can
Right.
turn off for
Right.
minors, you know,
Right.
make sure that's off because today's pictures, there's so much metadata as to exactly where the picture was taken and it ties back to where you live and everything else. That this stuff gets into the wrong hands, you know, you just never know it.
it's
So you
true.
got to be cautious about that.
Mhm.
Well, that's a very good conversation to hear what everyone has to think about this subject. Because it is something we have to deal with when we're trying to put things out. I've actually made trees, not modern people, but I make trees for people from the past when I'm trying to research them. As I was mentioning with that man who was building the canal here in Sturgeon Bay. So he's not my relative, but it's
He's your
helpful
new-
to see.
He's your
Yeah.
new best friend.
Yeah. Well,
Cool.
I feel sorry for him, but it is useful to see the genealogy when you're trying to understand the history of anything.
Mhm.
So I use it, the free Ancestry accounts for that. I hope it's okay. But whenever I help anyone, I always say, take everything with a grain of salt.
Oh, I
you
do
know,
too.
Because even the official documents are not necessarily.
Oh,
correct.
no. No,
Nothing's
especially
correct.
death certificates, because they're not always made at the time of the death, you
Yeah.
know?
And then the terminology you might run into is you'll see on a maybe on a census, the word inmate. Now, that does not mean prison necessarily.
Right, right.
You know, but I had a niece that just freaked and go, oh my God, he was an Indian. I said, no, just wait a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, we're coming up on 3 o'clock. So unless someone has something new to mention, I guess we'll call a close to this meeting. And then I'll see you in a month.
Okay, we're
Does
still gonna do
everyone,
Zoom. We're still
like to
gonna do
continue
Zoom, right?
meeting once a
Okay.
month?
Yep,
we're still on once a month then.
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
Yep, okay. Sounds
All right.
good, thank you.
Well,
All
Thank
right.
you,
everybody.
for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye
Bye.
now.